Hey everybody, welcome to the broadcast today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am here with Ashley Rodriguez, and she is here to give us some pointers on dealing with conflict and hostile environments in the workplace. Ashley has experienced this her own self, and her story is just amazing. I cannot wait for her to share it with you and bring her own experience into this. And then she actually started a business, which is another thing that I love about your story, Ashley, is that you took something that was really meant to hurt you, to harm you, to not allow you to progress in life, and you've turned it around and you've made something not only that helps others, but it's profitable to yourself. And that's just amazing. I love all of that. So Ashley, can you tell us a little bit about your background? Like maybe take us back to when you were in the military and kind of how you got started, how you ended up now, but give us the backstory about how you got here.
Right. Hello, everybody. So starting out, yes, this actually was a completely unplanned journey for me, which is really exciting that I've come to this point in my life. So in 2015, I joined the military. I was almost 21. I was already in college for about 2 years at that point, and just decided I was in a bad relationship and decided I need to break away. So I joined the military, and I had a great experience. I had a great time. I learned a lot of things. I really was able to challenge myself in ways that I never thought I could. And about 3 years into my military experience, I realized that I was probably dealing with some sort of toxic behavior, some sort of emotional abuse. And it wasn't until I got to that point 3 years into my military career that I was able to kind of reflect on why I was feeling the way I was feeling at the time. I was feeling pretty helpless. I was dealing with depression and anxiety. And I really didn't have any struggles going on in my life at that time. I was very blessed. So I really had to look at the workplace, which is where I was spending most of my time. What I noticed is I was working directly under a leader who had been my direct boss for 3 years up to that point. And I always, I guess, took his type of leadership for, he's forming me, he's helping me become a better leader. He's obviously been in the military a lot longer than me. And so I took some of his hurtful comments and his hurtful characteristics of his leadership as, okay, I just need to learn from it. And that's just his way of showing us that he is grooming us to be a good leader. What I realized, though, again, 3 years into this, was that it was actually very abusive. And similar to a personal relationship, there are types of abuse and toxicity that you can deal with in a work relationship. We just don't notice it because we go to work, and then at the end of the day, we go home. So after those 3 years, and I started getting the anger and the depression and the anxiety, and I started realizing the root of that coming from this individual, I started to notice a lot of changes where this person was purposely trying to get me in trouble every single day. It became a joke in our workplace. Hey, Ashley, what did you get in trouble for today? What did you do today? And so once other people around me started to notice the emotional abuse and the damage that was being done, that's what really clued me in and kind of sparked something in me that realized I don't have to stand for this. Again, I was in the military, so I was not able to put in my 2 weeks and quit and leave. So I had to develop other strategies with my therapist and the anger management counselor that I was seeing at the time. I had to develop other strategies to figure out how to get away from this situation and also to protect myself in those moments where I couldn't. So 2016, I decided, and I had a kind of a light bulb moment when I was in field training, that I wanted to have my own business and that I wanted that business to be speaking to people and speaking with people and sharing my stories. So I was able to pair that passion and that desire with my experience of workplace abuse and emotional abuse and bullying and kind of make those two things come together, where now I've developed kind of a step program of some sorts with 4 components that we can use to protect ourselves in the workplace.
Yeah, Ashley, thank you so much for giving us that that background and kind of telling us about where you are now. I want to focus on something though, that I want to dive into kind of what you were actually experiencing during this time, because when we hear people saying like, oh, my boss, my leader, he was trying to get me in trouble, he was doing, X, Y, and Z to me, it can sound to some people who have never experienced that who cares, just keep moving along. But your story was actually that this was a very big deal. This wasn't just, first of all, this person is in charge of you, and in the military, for people who weren't in the military, who aren't familiar a lot with this structure, this person, it wasn't the case necessarily for you, but it can be the case where you live with the person, right? You live in the same barracks, you live in the same housing, you are around them 24/7. So this is not just somebody who you deal with, 9 to 5, and then you can have a different life. This is somebody who is around you all of the time. And then second of all, you in the military, if you don't have the backing, so to speak, of somebody else, who is basically he said, she said at this point, isn't it? And you were trying to raise awareness. You were trying to raise awareness about what you were facing, but you didn't get the support that you needed from the higher up chain of command. So can you talk a little bit about some of those more details about that? Because it's important that people understand that this isn't just like I worked someplace even for 3 years. 3 years is a long time, but it isn't just like, oh, I had a boss that didn't like me for 3 years. This was very invasive, even trying to purposefully keep you from your husband. Can you just speak a little bit about those things to give people a background of like, this is not just somebody was, not kind to you or trying to undermine you, for a certain period of time. This was really, really harmful to you all around.
Right, absolutely, and I agree with you. There's times, and we've already talked previously off the record about me writing a book. There's times that I really want to share these stories, and I feel that it's important. But I do worry sometimes of, if people don't understand, it might sound like I'm complaining. But again, you're right. This was 3 years, so I'll just start off with how it started. When I got to my first unit, I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. And that is when I met this individual who was not my boss at the time. We actually got to our unit or our workplace at the same time. So we did all of our onboarding, our in-processing to become a part of the unit together. And shortly after we were in the unit, maybe 4 or 5 months, our current boss was relocated to a different unit, and he took that place. So when he took that place, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to interrupt
Mm-hmm.
here because this is a really important point that you're making. So this person, you started as friends, essentially. You started at this exact same time, exact same place. You came from 2 separate places, joined together at this place, and you started as friends. And this is the other aspect of abusive workplaces that I think people don't also understand. It's different when you come in. I think it's different when you come in and there's already a clear okay, hierarchy. You're the boss. I'm not the boss. I work for you. I work with you, whatever. But in this instance, it was even more harmful because you came in at the same time, same place. You thought you were friends.
Right, absolutely. So he was obviously of a higher rank. I believe at the time he was already an E6, had been in somewhere ballpark maybe 10 years. So he had already been experienced. And I will preface and say that at no point in this interaction or me working with this individual was there anything inappropriate. There was no innuendos. He never hit on me, nothing like that. It was always strictly professional and platonic. So I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in is the abuse that I went through was not outright. It was kind of teetering the line of, is this okay or not? It's a little thing, but that's really not a big deal. So yeah, coming into the unit together, I was new. I was brand new. I was very naive to the military world and the culture. fresh out of training. So this is my first unit. On top of that, I was assigned to an infantry unit. So there was very few females. There was maybe just a handful of us that were in existence in that unit at the time, because this was right before they had made it legal for women to serve in combat. So coming into this new unit and being taken in by everybody as this new person, he became one of my mentors that I looked up to in the world of leadership and in the military, because I didn't plan on doing 20 years, but I did figure, if I wanted to continue my journey, I want to make sure that I'm setting myself up for success. So he did a lot of training with me. He would complement some of the work that I would do and show me how to do better at it. He was actually a very great leader. And this is where it got confusing for me down the road, is there was no abuse, nothing that I can think of or remember in those early times. It was a lot of joking, a lot of teaching us the ropes. And it wasn't just me, there was other new soldiers as well, teaching us the ropes and really integrating us into the military. Where the abuse started was probably a year in. I started dating a man who is now my husband. And where I first started noticing the weirdness of it was when we became married. And there was some comments before. So just so everybody kind of knows, like the depth of it, he would make comments like, "Oh, are you sure you want to get married? Or you're gonna just regret it." He would make comments about people that wanted to commit suicide, and basically said that if they want to do it, they basically should have the freedom to do it. Who cares? And this was a leader that we served with, so it's very disheartening to see that Fort Riley, where I was stationed at the time, had become one of the highest suicide rates in the military. So it was a very prominent issue at the time. So he made little comments like that, and that's where the abuse kind of started. Again, I didn't equate it to abuse, but it was starting to become toxic. He would make comments to try to place doubt in my mind about my character or my decisions, to make me feel like I needed to second guess myself constantly. I was walking on eggshells around him because he would try to embarrass me in front of my colleagues and other people in our workplace, and then behind the scenes, if it was just me and him, or just him and I and another leader, he would compliment me and try to build me back up. So that's where it got really confusing, is here we had this person that I thought was a great leader, that was teaching me so much, was nice but professional and respectable. And then there was this weird line, and I can't even tell you where that line started, but there was this weird line where he started degrading me, building me back up, making comments about me to embarrass me in front of people, and then behind the scenes saying, "Well, you actually did a really great job," so on and so forth. So,
And I just want to say one other thing really quick. This is something that I talk about and I teach a lot about on my channel. This is something called gaslighting, which is where this is used to form that trauma bond, where it's very confusing for the person who's going through this. What is real, what isn't. There's the carrot and the stick, right? There's the love bombing and then the discarding phase. So you're getting both compliments. So it's like, okay, this person must care about me. They must like me, or they wouldn't say those things to me. But then there's also the majority of the time is being torn down, being told that you're worthless, you're nothing, planting seeds of like, I don't think you can even make a decision about who you should marry, that kind of thing. So this is very common, and it's really important that people are aware when this is happening, because I want you to continue with your story, because you did seek out help eventually. But if I think that sometimes if we could have identified things like this happening sooner, there's more actions we could take to protect ourselves from allowing this to continue. So sorry to interrupt. I just want to say that. So yes, please continue with your story though.
Yeah, no, thank you. I really appreciate that. I did eventually seek help. So I guess about a year and a half into it, was pretty nice. I didn't really notice it. My tolerance level, I had just come from training. So for me, I had dealt with worse things said to me and criticisms worse than what he was doing. What I didn't realize, though, was that I was going to be stuck under his leadership for years, not just a couple of months like training is designed to be. I was actually stuck under his leadership for years. So this was a long, chronic issue that was going on in my life. What prompted me to seek help was during our deployment in South Korea. So we were deployed over there. This is 2016, so probably about a year or so into me being under his leadership. And things were pretty heated over there. There was a lot of rioting. That's when North Korea was sending off a lot of missiles at the time. So even though it wasn't a combat area per se, our mission when we went there, we even received the hazard pay because of it, was to basically handle if there was a war to kick off between North and South Korea. So there was already a lot of tension in that atmosphere. Going forward to what you were saying, it was a deployment scenario. So my husband and I were already married at the time. We couldn't live together, so his barracks was actually a mile away from me, but it was up a hill. So he was only allowed to stay with me on the weekends. During the week we stayed apart. And that's really when the abuse started kind of kicking off. What happened was I had the opportunity to leave and switch units and to be in my husband's unit. And I was blessed to have been able to do that. What I didn't know, though, was that my leader, my boss that I have been talking about this whole time, was actually switching as well to the same unit on the same day. And I didn't find this out until maybe a few days before it was going to happen. At that point, our higher ups, and I'm talking sergeant major and battalion commander level. So they're pretty high up. I guess in the world that would be equivalent to like a CEO or something of that sort. People that make the big decisions have already vouched for me and put the things in motion for me to move. So at that point, there was no point in me asking them not to move me. They had already done so much to get me there. So yeah, a few days before I was supposed to make the switch, I find out that he is switching with me, which means he now becomes my boss again in the same position, but in a new unit. So all of the work and all of the realizations I had started to have in this unit, and I thought, finally, I'm gonna get free from this. I'm gonna break away. That wasn't the case. So he ends up being my leader. Now we're stuck together again because we're both coming into a new unit. Everybody's interested to find out who I am, who he is as a leader, because I was still a lower enlisted. I wasn't an NCO at this point. Everybody wanted to ask me what kind of leader he was. And I remember specifically, I would tell them, he can be petty was the word I would use. He can be petty, but he was fair. And this was still my interpretation of him at the time. So mostly I wanted to get away from a lot of the pettiness that was going on, which was in my mind, those comments that he was talking to me and kind of degrading me a little bit and things like that. So even at that point, I didn't realize the full extent of the abuse that I was going through. So as we're going through our deployment in South Korea, I started to realize more. He refused to call me by my married name. He would only call me by my maiden name, which, to me was a sign of disrespect toward my marriage. And he would do things like putting me on duty. So I didn't have the freedom to go to some of the events that were going on off duty. I think something small. I had paid, I think, $60 to go to the zoo with my husband. And I got put on duty last minute. He started putting me on overnight shifts. So I was on 15-hour overnight shifts. And that was to ensure that I didn't get to see my husband, who was working the normal, daytime shifts in his unit. So everything that he did was, in a way, and I can't say this for 100%, but this is how it ended up being, was to try to isolate me and to make me feel that I didn't have anybody, to the point when I became pregnant. My husband and I, after our field training out there, and we had let our leadership know that, hey, like, we are going to be trying for a family. I did become pregnant at that point, and that's when it really kicked off. So He was trying to send me to events by myself, and I was really sick. I just was not feeling very good, refusing to let me see our doctor because when I signed in, he had two other leaders in our platoon that worked with him. So there was three in total. There was him, who was the boss, and then there was this two little friends that he had that were in our platoon that backed him up as well. And one of those was my manager, and the other one was the manager of our clinic. So no matter what I did, I just couldn't get away from the situation of them always constantly trying to prevent me from getting the resources that I needed or being able to see my husband or, and I did have fun out there. I was able to have some freedom, but it was very difficult. I had to fight for it every time. I will say that the worst part of the abuse was when I started getting written up essentially in the civilian world. Would be getting written up every day, and this is when it started becoming a joke in the platoon. Oh, what did you do today, Ashley? I would come in and it would be something as simple as you didn't sign out of the clinic or tell the doctor you were leaving. So here's this piece of paper. And what was another one? I guess I didn't tell somebody where I was going or something, and there was another piece of paper. So in the military, they write these, they're called counseling. So they write these papers to basically document a pattern of behavior. So if it's a bad pattern of behavior, then at that point, they're able to recommend you for an Article 15, which is, in the real world, it could be like a suspension or unpaid leave or things like that. It's the equivalent of that. It's not a good thing. And so what he was trying to do was give me as many written up papers as he could from anything he could possibly think of to try to establish a pattern of behavior that wasn't really there. But if he could prove that there was something there, then I might get in trouble, I could lose my rank, or I could get kicked out of the military altogether. And that went on for several months.
Yeah, and also during this time, it's important to just kind of reiterate you're pregnant, and he also wouldn't approve you to get maternity uniforms. So you were stuck wearing clothes that didn't fit you, one, and number two, he would then use the fact that you weren't in regulation for how to wear the uniform appropriately to write you more of these counselings, more of these little notes that could go in your file.
Absolutely. So that did happen actually when we got home. I was about 6 weeks when we left Korea. But when I got home and we went through that, I was about 14 weeks. So I was already a few months. I was definitely showing my uniform was not fitting. The way that the military works is he has to sign off on paperwork to allow me to get the uniforms issued to me. It's not something we buy. It's something that's issued to us. And when we're done with our pregnancy, we return it to where the uniforms came from. So what happened was he refused to sign the memorandum, the paperwork, so that I could get those uniforms. And then I found out later on by other leaders that were in those meetings, this is before I started attending those meetings, that he was making comments about soldiers that he had that were not wearing their uniform properly. When he started doing that, other leaders picked up on it, and we still don't know who it was to this day. We have an idea of who it might have been, but one of the leaders put in a formal complaint against him to initiate an investigation. So it was myself and a coworker of mine who was also pregnant at the same time. And we were very close in gestation. So we were pretty much going through the same thing. She was in our platoon with us. She was getting a lot of abuse. They didn't like her because she was very outspoken. She was a Black woman. She was very strong in everything that she did and very purposeful in everything that she did. And, so that just doesn't sit well sometimes in a military culture when you're a woman, but you're also very strong in your opinions and your beliefs. I will say that I don't know that that was the full extent of it, but that's what was going on with our situation at the time. And they refused to get us our uniforms, so a formal investigation was launched against him.
And it's important to note that in the military, there needs to be that paperwork filed for a formal investigation so in the military, you can't just say like, okay, I've had enough, I want to transfer to another unit, right? So there has to be an actual reason. You can't just decide,
Absolutely.
you want to go somewhere else. So it's really, really critical. It's a really crucial piece of information that you're about to share about this other person filing a formal complaint, so that this would allow you the opportunity to get away from this guy, essentially.
Absolutely. And really the best part about it was I felt liberated in a sense that somebody was seeing this also, that I wasn't going crazy. Shortly before we left Korea, it was so bad for me that I requested to go inpatient, which, into a psychiatric unit. It was that bad that I wasn't crazy. I was just at my wits' end. Every day I came into work, I was getting a piece of paper that told me something I did wrong. I was getting put on extra duty. I was being denied privileges to go and explore South Korea with some of my colleagues and with my husband. It was a very, very toxic environment, and like I said, it really propelled when we were in South Korea, but when we got home, it continued on. So he refused to let me have my uniforms. Again, with the paperwork, I was still getting in trouble up to this point. I was doing layouts with my gear. So if all of you have seen the typical military look of a military person with their big green bags, that was me at 6 months pregnant, carrying all of my gear. I was a high risk pregnancy because I had 2 miscarriages prior to that while I was under his leadership. And so things like that, it was very toxic, and this was an everyday environment. I felt like my mental health was at risk working with him. I felt that my physical health was at risk working with him, and really my saving grace was another leader initiating an investigation against him. And what actually happened was they put the complaint up at the hospital, which is not attached to us whatsoever, but somebody sent that complaint over to our unit, which, our workplace, and that's when the investigation was started. They couldn't ignore it any longer at that point. It's very difficult, and I know a lot of people might be wondering, well, why didn't you go and get help and go to his boss? And the way that the military works is, if it's a pyramid. So I'm way down here, he's the little pinpoint at the top, and if I want to go above him, I risk retaliation and getting in trouble as well if I don't have the evidence to support why I'm skipping over my chain of command. So what ended up happening was I expressed my issues about him to him. I was very honest. I was professional about it. I told him I did not trust him. I told him I didn't feel comfortable speaking with him. And he was supposed to relay that message up higher so we can figure out a way to tackle this. Instead, what he did was he kept it to himself or to the other two that were helping him. And so I was stuck. I wasn't able to transfer. I wasn't able to speak to people above me. Even if I request to speak to somebody that's in a position above him, I have to tell him the reason I want to talk to them, and hopefully get the approval to talk to them. So they do it for a reason. It's to establish organization in chaos, essentially, because there's always something going on in the military. But in the sense of dealing with a toxic leader or an abusive leader, it makes it very difficult to overcome that, because you essentially are stuck. And it's very similar to somebody that's in an abusive relationship stuck at home. You just feel like you can't get away, you feel helpless, you feel angry. And I did that at that point. So about 6 months pregnant, that is when I sought help to deal with my anger, to deal with my anxiety and my depression, because of what I was going through with him, and just constantly feeling like I wasn't meeting up to, the standards of what my work needed from me. And that was very difficult for me because my reputation matters to me. I'm a very hard worker. I was a hard worker in the military as well. And so that was very difficult to me, to always feel like, wow, I'm just really not getting it. I'm not doing good. It was very difficult for me. So that's when I finally sought help. And it was at the same time this investigation was going on, and the investigation ended up, the officer who did it did not do his job. He did not do his due diligence. And all of the witnesses that I gave him that were ready to testify against him, he had me write on a separate piece of paper. So being naive and just not understanding how the investigations worked. That officer, because it was not included in my legal statement, he was not obligated to interview them. So long story short, that leader is still out there in the military. Very abusive, very toxic. And like I said, it wasn't just me. There were several other people that felt it and that wanted to speak up. But when you speak up, you definitely face retaliation of some sort. It's very socially political because you are with these people 24/7. You live with them, you work with them. There's just no getting away. So it creates the perfect scenario to keep people quiet. And that's why I'm writing my book, because I'm free now and there's nothing that they can do to me for sharing my story. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I love that. Again, I love that you are taking something that was meant to crush you, that was meant to really ruin you, make you bitter about this whole scenario, not want to trust people, not want to try again. And you've not only overcome that your own self and become stronger for it, but you've actually started a business now to teach people, to coach people on how to handle these hostile environments, especially in the workplace. So now, if you don't mind, I'd love to, I just thank you so much for sharing your story. We were talking just before we went live and we both agree. There's, if you're not paying attention right now to military things that are happening, there is an abnormal amount of females going missing, being killed, and the chain of command is really not at all paying attention. They're not concerned. And I was just saying there's another Fort Hood soldier that is missing, and the chain of command can't even identify the day that she went missing, which is outrageous because you're being checked like all the time, right? Like there's information. You have to be checking in with your chain of command all day, every day. And not only you, but like all of your stuff, all of your equipment. And so this is really, really concerning. And we were saying that those women cannot share their story. They're not here anymore to share their story. And it's so important that people like yourself, Ashley, people who have gone through this are willing to stand up and tell their story, because your voice is the only one left, out of people who are experiencing this. There's so many people who don't have a voice anymore, and they need somebody to expose what is happening. Justice for them, and justice for all the people who are still going through this situation, who are not who are silent, who are feeling kind of like you did. Like, I feel so at my wit's end. I'm ready to get checked into the hospital. I will do anything to get away from this environment. It was really that extreme, right? And so now you started a company, you started a business, and I want you to tell us about that. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your company? I know that there's 4 things that you want to cover, and tell us a little bit about where you are now, because now you have a sweet little baby who's running all around. And so I would love for you to tell us about where your life is now, and please tell us about your company and what you do.
Yeah, of course. So a little bit going into the company, essentially, like I said, I had that desire that I wanted to talk to people and share my story. After going through what I went through in the military, oh goodness. Okay, so I realized that in the business world, there's not a huge emphasis on communication, and specifically how to deal with different types of communication in the workplace. Like I said, it took me 3 years before I realized that what I was experiencing was actually abuse and not leadership. And so that's when I was able to do some of the back research. I read a dissertation from a prior general in the Army that spoke specifically on toxic leadership and what it is. And so a lot of the stuff that I talk about in my business is finding your communication style and trying to understand other communication styles. From there, you're able to kind of decipher if it's a misunderstanding and maybe there's some tension because people just aren't getting along, which does happen, or is it really a toxic person that is seeking to dismantle a person or an organization. So the difference there is a toxic person has an agenda, whether it's readily available and they know it or they don't. A toxic person is somebody that is seeking to destroy or dismantle a person or an organization. That's a key indication. If somebody is seeking, like my boss was seeking to destroy my reputation, get me in trouble based on a pattern of behavior that didn't exist. And of course, it never worked. So even the last year and a half of those 3 years, I didn't get in trouble. I actually got early promotion and was sent to the board because after that investigation, they moved me out from his leadership. They finally heard me. The boss that I had at that time that was above him was my husband's prior boss, and he already knew who I was as a person, and so he sat down and listened to me, looked at the investigation, and they removed me because he was in the wrong. Although they couldn't prosecute him in a legal way because the investigation was done poorly, they saw what I was going through and they heard me and they moved me. So I'm forever thankful for the leadership that was above him. That's really where I got the help that I needed. So I wanted to take that passion for wanting to share my story and communicate with people and bring it into the workplace. I don't have a huge desire to work on a one-on-one as a therapist or a personal coach, just because I seek a lot of help for myself. So I chose to focus on groups, the workplace, and kind of how we interact in that workplace. So there's communication styles that you figure out. Then from there, you can find out if it's a misunderstanding or if it's a toxic person. If you find out that you are dealing with toxic people or toxic leadership, then you need to figure out a way that you can escape that. So if you can't quit because financially you can't afford it or you're under contract, there's ways that you can escape and try to protect yourself while you're in that environment. And that includes, and this is exactly what I had to do, and that's why I incorporate it in my business little 4-step program that I go through. So journaling is going to be your best defense, and that this is what I had to do to protect myself. When you write in a journal, each time a scenario or a situation happens, with the time, the witnesses that were around, what exactly happened, if you can get quotes in there, get quotes in there. If you establish a pattern in your journal of these situations happening, it's very hard for somebody to dispute a day and time and witnesses being around. So you're protecting yourself because you're establishing proof, essentially, that this is going on. And of course, over time, you have a long list of events that happened.
That's so good. And not only does it protect you if you need to get other people involved, but I shared with you, and my viewers already know my story, but I would write that down, and I would write notes to myself, like, you did not make this up. This actually happened, because you'll start thinking, like, did I hear that? Did I interpret it correctly? Did they really mean this? Was that really what they said to me? You start questioning your own thoughts, your own experiences. That's all part of gaslighting. And so this not only protects you legally or whatever, it should some situation arise where you need to get another person or party involved, but it can also help protect and defend your own mental health, your own emotional health. So I love what you're talking about. Thank you for sharing that and making sure that you touch on that. That's so important.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And I really decided to do that and kind of go the route of figuring this out, because there is no playbook or rule book of what to do when you're stuck in a very toxic situation that is damaging to you. I mean, I was literally in mental health, requesting to go inpatient, seeing anger management. So very obviously I was dealing with something, and it wasn't at home. I was very happy at home. We still are 4 years later, 5 years later. So it was a really difficult time for me, on top of the fact that I was pregnant, and it was very difficult. So definitely writing down everything you can. It got to the point where that boss that I'm talking about started telling our other leaders, hey, don't be alone with Ashley, because you can get in trouble. And it got to the point where if he was talking to me and he was making these comments or he was doing something, I would pull out my notebook in front of him. There was no rules against that. If I wasn't addressing him, and I didn't need to have my hands behind my back, because again, military, a lot of men, not all of them, but the ones that are toxic, the ones that thrive off of having their ego stroked, maybe narcissistic, as you're very familiar dealing with. They love the power moves. So me talking to a leader, military courtesy is to have my hands behind my back. It's called parade rest. So having my hands behind my back, which is a sign of submission. That was another thing that he was able to use against me to have power over me. Because, I mean, think about it. If your hands are behind your back, you can't defend yourself. You know, it's a very submissive, vulnerable position to stand in when you're addressing somebody. Well, when these situations were going on, it got to the point I would get out of that position, pull out my notebook, and I would write down a document. And he would ask me, "What are you doing?" And I'm just recording our conversation, just recording this situation. So I started doing that, and it was, in that sense, it was very passive aggressive of me, and I do realize that. But it was the only thing that I felt at the time that I could do to use my voice without completely getting thrown off, you know, or getting in trouble for being outright disrespectful. So it was a little bit tricky. That's where I discovered, hey, if I document everything, when I'm ready to make this into a legal report or report this to somebody higher than him, now I don't have to sit there and be like, well, I think he was being rude, or I think he was being inappropriate, or I think he was being abusive. Now I can look back and say, oh my goodness, like, on paper, this is abusive. This is truly abuse. And I was able to take that list to my therapist and have her walk me through some of it. And that's where I really discovered more about him than anything. So I will say, through all of this, I'm glad for what I went through, because he taught me a lot. I was able to adapt and overcome his efforts to get me in trouble or get me kicked out or whatever his agenda was. Because to this day, I really don't know. But it was very, very damaging at the time. And then once you can establish that pattern you've written down in the journal or the piece of paper or whatever you choose to do these situations, now you have the freedom to make those reports and document everything in an accurate way, including the witnesses that were involved. And that's how I was able to do that in the investigation. Even though the investigation was not done properly, I did my part in making sure that I was listing as much information as I could, as accurately as I could. So.
Yeah, that is so good. That's so good. And talk to us now about communication styles, because I want to make sure that people leave here with a way to understand, first of all, maybe where they are currently with their communication styles, and then second of all, the most effective communication style. And then if you want to talk a little bit about your giveaway, the link is in all of the streaming platforms as well. So yeah, can you talk about communication styles and the most effective way to communicate, especially in a hostile environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I go off of 3 communication styles, depending on who you're talking to, or the expert that you're listening to, or the school that you go to. It ranges anywhere from 3 to 5, sometimes more, sometimes less. So I focus on 3. I focus on 3 as kind of the main styles, and then there might be some sub styles under there that better or more accurately define how you communicate. So the way that I look at it is, there is aggressive, which is obviously too much. There's passive, which is a little too little, and then there's assertive, which is right in the middle, and that's the perfect place to be if you can balance that out. Aggressive are the people that always have something to say. They always have an opinion. They're volunteering for every project. They're trying to get every promotion. They're very aggressive in what they're trying to do. And assertive people, on the other hand, can kind of balance that, where they know when to sit back, you know, and they know when to speak up, so they're not overbearing constantly. When you're in passive communication, you're likely to get passed up on projects. You don't volunteer as much. You don't put yourself out there as much. You're very okay with just letting whatever happen to you happen to you. And obviously that's not good either, because you are powerful and you do have experience, and you know you are capable, so you should be able to speak up at key times. So passive is too little, aggressive is too much, and assertive is really where you want to be to kind of balance those out. I am including a free download for everybody here. I would love for you guys to check it out, completely free. It's just on my Google Drive, so once you click the link, there should be an option for you to download that. And I go through the different communication styles and what they might look like in the workplace and what they might look like at home in a relationship. So it's very basic information, but it's a great guideline to start with and hopefully see where you might be and where other people around you are.
Yeah, and thank you for providing that too. Like I said, whatever mode you're watching this on, if you're in YouTube, it's in the description. If you're on Facebook, it's in the little wording, above the video. Thank you for including that. It is really helpful. I really encourage you guys to go download that because she does give examples of what that looks like. And so you can very clearly identify where you are. And it's so good that you also brought up the passivity aspect of it, of like, well, whatever happens to me is what happens to me. And on this channel, I am all about teaching people to take back their authority, to assert their power, to not give up their power to other people. And that is so important, recognizing that no, not whatever will happen to you will happen to you. You set the tone for what you want to have happen to you. You get to control that. And so I love that part of it too. Just reiterating the fact that you have sovereignty, even in a situation like this, which was horrible because you were very much so trapped. You could not move, right? And also, like, I'm sure people understand this, but like, the military, you cannot just leave. You cannot, like, you can go to jail for doing that. So so there really was no other option for you, and you were trying to find any way to move. You did transfer, and he followed you there.
Yes.
You were seeking out help, but those techniques that were given to you, it still doesn't eliminate the hostile environment that you were in. So then you were trying to just get into the hospital. I don't care where I need to go. I just need to get out of here. And it's really important that people understand that this is such a toxic thing to experience. And the more information, the more knowledge that you have about the situation, about what does abuse look like, what does it sound like, and what is my response to that abuse? Where am I on that continuum of, am I aggressive? Am I passive? Am I assertive? Am I doing something to cause the or inflame the environment that's already hostile? That's so important. Thank you so much for providing that. If people want to connect with you, can you tell us, like, first, I know all of your links are also in the description. If you want to follow Ashley, please go do so. I've got her Instagram and her Facebook and her website all linked again in the description. But if people would like to contact you for more information, maybe training or coaching opportunities that you have, can you talk a little bit about like the offers that you have through your company really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's even way more to this than what we were able to discuss today, including how to have a victim to powerhouse mentality. And that really tops everything off. So I do talk about that a lot. I'm sure you can find it on my website or my Instagram because I have talked about it quite a bit. But yeah, you can find me at Savvy Descant. It's SAVVYDESCANT. And my website is the same spelling, so it's www.savvydescant.com. And yeah, I always do free consultations. So look, I'm so blessed with my military experience, everything I went through. I don't have to worry so much about money. I'm not out here to try to take your money or sell you. I really just want to help people. And if that turns into a partnership that we have, then great. So I do offer one-to-one coaching. I offer workshops for business owners that have teams that they want to make sure are acting efficiently and productively. So making sure that there's no toxicity in there. But yeah, for the one-to-one coaching, we can always do free consultations. I can talk about the workplace. That's really my true passion because of what I went through. And I realized that it's really not that readily available for people that are researching because I couldn't find it. I researched and tried to figure out, how do I get out of this? What can I do? How can I work on myself in this situation? And there wasn't a lot out there for the workplace. So free consultations, if you like what you're hearing or you find a need for my service, then absolutely we can move forward with that, but there's no pressure whatsoever. And in addition to that, My end goal for everybody listening is I would love to just travel around and speak. I mean, paid or not paid, I would love to be on stage, sharing my information, sharing my story. So if you know any events that are going on, especially post-coronavirus, hit me up. You have my information, and I would love to come speak and just share my story, big or small.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ashley, your story is so powerful, and the way that you came out of this is so beautiful. Like you really embody everything that I hope everybody takes, a note of. When there's negative stuff happening to you, there's always a silver lining. You need to find that silver lining and build upon it,
Yes.
and that's really what you did. And I love that you were talking about the victim mentality and how to shift that over into this powerhouse mentality. It's so good. It's so needed. It's so necessary. You guys need to invite Ashley to any kind of speaking engagement, to work with your companies. If it's digital, if it's on Zoom,
Yes.
we're just doing this over the internet, and it's affecting people. We need to have this message going forth. Ashley, thank you so much for sharing. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Sarah's like, do not end it. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, she keeps everything on track. So I did want to address one comment that was mentioned, and I would love to get your take on this as well. Somebody had mentioned that they find that they mirror narcissistic traits, or they find that they have narcissistic traits even though they care about people. And I talk about this a lot on my channel. People who go through abuse tend to mirror their abuser because, one, they're soaked in the environment, all day or for a period of time or whatever. So you naturally will pick up tendencies. Number two, you see that the narcissist or whoever is the abuser in this situation is getting what they want, and you want to get what you want. And so you will start thinking, even subconsciously, even if this is not a formed thought, consciously in your mind, you're thinking, I want to get to where they are. I will do what they are doing because they are getting the result that I want to get. I want to be listened to. I want to have control over my life. I want to be able to see what I want manifested as well. So you'll start doing that. And then the other thing too is that you do just naturally pick up on that because you don't want to feel hurt, right? You would rather be the herder, the abuser, than the abused. You would rather, you're tired of it. And so this is common. This is very common. I would be surprised if there's ever a case where somebody doesn't have those characteristics or those tendencies. You have to be aware of the fact, and even saying like, hey, I find myself doing the things that the abuser did. That's really amazing. That's being self-aware. It's developing that self-awareness that you need to change that. So that's my kind of take on it. Ashley, do you have anything to add to that? What is your perspective on that? Do you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're totally right. In my world, dealing with communication, because I'm not, a therapist of any sort at the moment, in my world, that would be considered aggressive. So aggressive communication, and communication is not, it doesn't have to be words. It doesn't have to be verbal. It can be the way that you're treating people or the way that you're going about a situation. Everything you do essentially is communication. You're communicating something, whether it's your intentions or what the case is. So I will say, don't feel bad. Like Angel said, that is complete self-awareness, and that's a wonderful place to start. I went through several phases where I thought I was crazy, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm evil, because I started trying to get him back, and it became this long battle. And really, at the end of it, I felt like it was kind of a little bit of a war in my life. And each of these circumstances were the battle that I was fighting. So I actually went through, at the very beginning, I was very passive. I let him treat me however he wanted because I felt like he's my leader. I'm new here. I just need to be quiet and just let anything happen. As the time went on and I started realizing the abuse, I started becoming aggressive. Once people started validating me and really validating the fact that I wasn't crazy and that he really was abusive, and that they were seeing how he was treating me and that it wasn't right. They were telling me all these things, but again, too fearful to speak up for themselves because of the environment that we were in. I started becoming aggressive because in my head, I was like, oh, I'm right. It doesn't matter how I say it or how I go about this. I'm right and he's wrong, and I'm going to get this, right? So that could probably be taken as a type of like narcissistic, because I thought I was right. I thought I was end all be all, but really it was just a really aggressive way to communicate what I was trying to do, which was get out from under him. As time went on from that, I was able to learn how to be more assertive in nature, where I could speak up and say what I needed. So I was doing my journaling. A lot of it was behind the scenes, a lot of work with my therapist, and just making sure that I was preparing myself for a long journey. If you are moody one day or aggressive one day, it doesn't define you for the rest of the year. There are qualities about yourself that you can work on with experts to achieve the type of character that you really want to have and uphold in the workplace. So I'll agree with you, Angel. That's very common. I went through it myself. Granted, I considered it very aggressive in nature, so because I deal with communication. And I'm not there now, so I feel great about where I'm at. I feel like I really have a stepping stone, and really, it kind of feels like you're going through a grieving process through all of this. And that's where some of those, I guess, unattractive qualities will come out of you, because you're grieving, you're going through a process, and that's okay.
It's so important to recognize that this is a process, that's for sure. Yeah, Sarah, my assistant, is just going to start putting stuff up on the screen because I'm not paying attention close enough to her text. So we have another question before we go. Will those tendencies? Okay, great. Yeah, I'm like, okay, well, we're all done. She's like, hello. So will those tendencies go away once you get away from that abuse? And I think that what Ashley was just explaining is so important. Ashley, you didn't wait to get away from the abuse before you took control over your own, the way that this was affecting you and the way that you were expressing how this was affecting you. And I am 100% on board with this, because two things. One, I believe every situation is, you're meant to learn something from every situation, even these horrible situations that you shouldn't even find yourself in. Like, you're in the situation, you need to get the lesson so that you don't end up in that situation again. Only by learning whatever that situation is, regardless, good or bad, honestly, even great situations, learn, like, how did I get here? What did I do to make this occur? What did I partner with in order to have this really awesome thing happen to me? Because you want to replicate that. And in the opposite sense of when you find yourself in a horrible situation, you know, what is this situation trying to teach me? What can I learn? What lessons can I gain? So don't wait for your perfect life before you start adjusting, you know, yourself and taking authority again over your own feelings, the way that you're expressing your emotions, the way that this is affecting other relationships, other aspects of your life. And I like what you were talking about, because it really is this kind of like roller coaster ride. Like, you're fighting to get validated. Now people validate you, and now you're like, let's get them. Like, let's go get revenge on the, you know, like, great. Now I've got this tribe that can back me up and help me, you know, get revenge on this person. And then you find yourself exactly what we're talking about, right? Like, exhibiting the tendencies of the abuser. You're perpetuating the thing. You don't actually want to be that person. You just want to be heard. You want to be validated. And you want this toxic environment to stop. And so you can't make the toxic environment stop, which is ultimately your end goal, by being the toxic person. And so what you did was continue to work, right, like behind the scenes with your therapist, with your journaling, with addressing this toxic leader in a different way, even journaling in front of him, like, no, I'm gonna write down what we're talking about. I'm gonna write down our interactions so that I have this for later on. So you started doing, you in the midst of all of this stuff going on, you didn't wait till you were like away from this guy before you got help, before you started changing. You started right then and there. And I really applaud you and commend you for that. That's exactly what you should do. And it's amazing that you we're like, no, I can't live this way. I have to get help right now. Yeah. And so that is my recommendation as well. Like if you think that you're going to wait to get out of that situation to start working on yourself, it's the worst thing that you could do, because you don't know how long you're going to be in the situation. You don't know how long you're going to have to be with that toxic person or around that toxic person or in that environment. So why are you going to let, weeks, months, years of your life go by? And number two, even if you get out of that situation, let's say tomorrow, but you've done no work during this whole, 2-3 years, like in your case, it was years and years and years of every day going through this, right? Even on your weekends, because you were put on this extra duty, and your spare time was taken away from even seeing your husband and things like that. You would be so out of your mind. You would be so not your own self. You'd be so lost about who you truly are that you wouldn't be able to make good decisions even after you got out of that toxic environment. You wouldn't. You think, oh, when I'm out of this toxic environment, I'm going to create the life I want. No, you won't, because you're not going to know who you are. You're not going to be able to make decisions the way that you need to make decisions. Catch it immediately and start addressing it straight away. Don't wait for it to be perfect. There's no such thing.
Right. I so agree with you. You're absolutely right, because if you guys remember in the story that I was telling you what I went through, I thought I was getting away. And what ended up happening was we transferred together, and I went through another year and a half of it. So it was very damaging to me. And I will be the first to say that I still to this day struggle with some of those things. If I feel embarrassed in front of people, I notice that it'll cause something inside of me, and it's very uncomfortable that I have to deal with. So just being able to acknowledge that, hey, I have this tendency, or this is how I'm reacting, this is how I'm handling this, and figure out why you're doing that. Embarrassment for me because of what I went through. And also some stuff in my own childhood. Don't discount what you've gone through, leading up to a working age and being in the workplace. Stuff in your childhood affects that too. And that's why I also applaud anybody that is seeking out therapy or talking to somebody, because therapy should not be something that you go to fix you. It should be preventative. You should be able to talk to somebody that you trust or an expert, and you can tell them what you're going through in those moments. And I still see my therapist to this day, and it doesn't mean that I'm crazy. That's the stigma about it, that some people believe I'm not crazy, but I am preventing myself from having a catastrophic breakdown because I'm able to work on myself in tiny chunks. And that's where I came up with the victim to powerhouse mentality. The best way I describe it real quick is just having a puzzle piece. When you go through hard times, you feel like, oh, I've lost a piece of me, I'm broken, I've lost my innocence. And I'm here to tell you that that's not the case, and we can look at it differently. When you're born, when you're a baby, you don't have beliefs yet, you don't have experiences yet, you don't have anything to offer the world yet. As you go through life and you experience things, it's like a puzzle piece being added to your puzzle until eventually you get this whole picture of who you are. So if you're able to take even the negative circumstances that you go through and look at it as a puzzle piece of adding to you, all of the negative that I went through in that time of my life, I've developed a business off of it. I've developed a passion out of it, and I'm able to do what I really love in life and help other people, because those are all puzzle pieces that make me who I am. It didn't take anything from me. It changed the picture and added to it to make who I am. And that's part of that victim to powerhouse mentality. So
wow.
yeah.
Wow. I'm going to go back and listen to that last part. Seriously, that was so good, Ashley. It didn't take away from you, but it changed the picture and it added to you. Wow, what a beautiful perspective. Thank you so much for, sharing your story, and for being true to who you are and your experiences. So often we just wish we didn't experience something, so we try to ignore it, we try to shove it down, we try to, like, that was never a part of this story, don't look over here, kind of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Those are the parts of us that we have to expose the most. People are going to find their healing in those parts of us, and we will find our healing and even a deeper connection to our true identity and our purpose, right? You've created a business off of it. That's exactly what I did. Any kind of negative thing that happens to me, I start looking like, okay,
yes.
where's the opportunity in this? Because there is definitely an opportunity. I wouldn't face this situation just to like go through something negative. Like, nope, there's something real positive happening from this. I need to find out what that is, and I'm going to partner with it. I'm going to extract all of that stuff out of it, you know? So I love what you just said, Ashley. That is so powerful. I wish, and in fact, I pray it right now, and I just declare it over everybody who's watching this, that you will have that mentality. You will have something that Ashley carries. Let that be imparted to you. You know, take hold of what she is saying right now. This is so amazing. I love that. And before we got on before we started streaming, we were talking, and Ashley, I hope it's okay that we talk about this. You were talking about how sometimes people who feel like they don't have a certain standing or degree or whatever feel that they can't quite speak up about a subject. They can't be an expert, or they can't be the owner of that sphere because they don't have the traditional qualifications or the things that the world will tell you will make you an expert, right? And by the way, if you are looking to get back into the workforce, or you're trying to change careers or whatever, stay tuned. In like 2 or 3 weeks, my guest is a guy named Kevin. He owns an amazing company called Resumetics, and he takes real life experiences and he turns that into something marketable on your resumes. It's going to be amazing. But can you talk about that? Because I want people to understand, like, Ashley, you don't have, right? You don't have all of these letters after your name, and that did not hinder you. What you should have had did not hinder you from going out, creating your dream, starting your business, making the life that you are called to live. And I think that that's so often hindering people from just stepping out and going to go live their life. We are not all called to be the same, right?
No.
And that doesn't lessen who we are. We are all made different. So can you just talk about that really quick? Because I know I imagine that had to take a lot of just commitment to yourself, you know, commitment to like, this is who I am, and I own it. You know, I'm going to still step out, and I'm going to let the world see the real me. And I'm not going to wait until, again, going back to the same thing, like, I'm not going to wait until I'm done with my degree, and I'm not going to wait until I have these certifications to put after my name before I start my training, before I start my business, before I start helping other people and telling my story. That's amazing. Can you just talk about that really quick as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super passionate about this as well because I started college in 2012. I graduated high school. I worked with my mom for a few months, and then I went off to college. So in total, I have about 8 years of college experience. But what happened when I was going through the military, every time I moved, I would switch colleges. So when you switch colleges, they can only transfer so many credits. So now I've been going to school for 8 years, and I have enough credits to make a degree, but it's finding an institution that can incorporate all of those credits to give me that degree. So I became very frustrated, feeling like, wow, I've been going to school. I felt behind my peers. I'm 26 years old, so I don't have the age factor for people that, you know, see me and just want to listen to what I have to say. But I truly believe that life experience and, you know, in conjunction with education, and it doesn't have to be an institution, everything that makes you, you have a story to share, you have an idea to share, you have thoughts to share, and you have experience to share. And I think that that's the most important thing. There's some of the most prominent mentors that I listen to, including very famous ones like Gary Vee that people are well aware of, that talk very big on, you know, you don't have to go to college and have this degree to have a story to tell. And that's the greatest thing about starting my business, is nobody is forced to use my business. So if they like what I have to say, I'm very honest. I don't know it all. I never will. I'm a human being, but I do connect with people and make resources and network with others, so that if I don't have an answer, or if I'm seeking more information about something, then I have somebody or some organization that I can reach out to. So it's just being humble and knowing that you're never going to know everything, and also using who you are and the story of who you are, your puzzle piece, and your picture, to offer something to the world. And it's never too early or too late to do that. I truly believe that I'm 26, but that doesn't mean I have to wait until I'm 40 to experience what 40-year-olds go through. I can listen to my mentors and my teachers and people that I trust and learn from their mistakes so that I can do things a little faster than they were able to do. I can avoid mistakes earlier that they went through. So it's all about just taking in information and using what works for you, and letting the other stuff fall to the side.
Yeah, wow. That's so good, Ashley. And I absolutely can say, like, I've been on both sides of this conversation now. Before I owned my own businesses, I worked for the government for 13 years, and 6 of those I was in the Army myself. And as a PhD, my PhD role was, it's very, I'm there to fulfill a function, right? My PhD tells the government this is what she will do. When you own your own company, when you own your own business, I don't have to be Dr. Storm. I can be Angel, and I can bring in parts of that part of my life which are very important to me. I like that, right? That's something that is part of me for sure. But I like who I am as a person besides all of that, and so I'm able to bring all of that together and give that away, which I feel like is way better than just getting this like sliver of a function that I of a role that I was hired to fulfill, And so I completely agree with what you're saying. Like you do not, that so often people then start identifying as their degree. They start identifying like, I'm just this, and like I'm a lawyer because I have a law degree, or I'm right. And they're missing the part of who they are, like not just what they do. And now that line between who I am and what I do is getting more and more blurred. And I like that. I like that because it's not just that I'm fulfilling this function and like, you don't get any of this part of me over here. Now it's like, no, it's very fluid, and you're exactly right. Like if you think that you need that, you might be pigeonholing yourself into a thing that you don't even want to go down anyway. So I love what you're saying with that. That's so good. And yeah, like Gary Vee, he talks all the time, right? He doesn't have all of the stuff that you would need to be a multimillionaire, right? Or a multi-business owner, or even a business person in general. He doesn't have that, and in fact, his upbringing and everything else is completely opposite of what you would think of somebody who's going to be successful in business. So it just goes to show, like, if you're true to yourself, you have a vision for what you want, and you get the tools necessary to get there. It doesn't matter about this extra stuff. So you don't have the work experience, in the traditional sense. It doesn't matter, and it shouldn't hold you back. And really, when you can shift into that mindset and truly embody those beliefs in yourself, that's when you're going to see results. So I completely agree with everything that you're talking about, and I love that you can relate to the struggle of somebody who you have been working on this degree, you have been dedicated to it. It just hasn't worked out the way that you thought it was going to in your mind. But that the fact that your plan didn't turn out the way that you thought it was going to when you started never hindered you from, still loving life, living your life to the fullest, and ultimately starting a company from it. I just love it. I love everything that you've done. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I think about it, I don't know if I would be here or if I would have the business that I have just from my college experience. I mean, it really took that damaging and very, very powerful situation that I went through in the military, which was after attending college for some years, that I really developed a passion for this. So I would say that your life experiences are even more important than education, like an institutionalized education is what I'll say, in the sense that getting a degree helps you from a, I guess, professional perspective. It gives you a little bit more credibility in some sense, but it should never discount your life experience, because your life experience is completely what's going to fuel what you do in life and what you like and what you don't like. So definitely listen to those. That's actually what I do through Savvy Descant. I focus on monetizing, how you can monetize what you already have and who you are. I focus on idea generation, so coming up with fresh ideas and creative ideas to find ways to monetize yourself. And this is all a part of being self-sufficient and independent. And that's really what I love to do with my business. And then on top of that, just being able to facilitate, and create a brand and really grow a business by focusing on that, on those aspects and on communication. So definitely my life experiences are what put me here, and not my college degree, because I haven't gotten there yet. So that says a lot.
Absolutely. Exactly. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Ashley, for being on here. I really appreciate having you on as a guest. And you guys, again, you can find her in the description on YouTube, right below the video, on Facebook, right above the video, and any of those other platforms that this may end up on. It's in there wherever the description is. So go follow her on Instagram. She's got a lot of good stuff on there. Go check out her website. Click on the free download that is also in the link in the description as well. Start taking a look at yourself and educating yourself on it, and get in contact with Ashley. Invite her to speak at an engagement, an event, if you guys have such a platform. If you own a company, if you need training, keep her in mind. She brings so much to the table, and she will really speak life into whatever situation she comes into. So you guys, thanks so much for watching. Ashley, thank you so much again for being on the show. And I would like to have you back on. I definitely think that there's way more here to be talking about, and maybe even speaking about something to do with like military culture and this issue still that we are facing of women not just, it's crazy. It really is crazy to think about it, because women have been in the military for a long time, and there's still such an issue of abuse that's happening in the military. So I would love to talk about that more, or whatever else.
I would love to come back and talk about my book, which deals with sexual assault and bullying specifically, is what my book is about, because I experienced both of those. So I would love to come back, and if your audience will have me, and talk about that book and what led me to that book and what I hope to do with it. So
absolutely.
That would be an awesome opportunity. Yes. And yes, invite me. Bear with my social media, because I don't have a huge social media presence. So you guys, if you're watching this, feel free to invite me, work with me, and help me be able to grow that as well. Because if you look at my Instagram, I don't have a lot on there as of yet, but we're working on it. So
yeah, and Ashley's story needs to go out. So your guys, your interaction with her, your likes, your shares, that really helps not just Ashley and her business grow, which we need to support, but also her story. This story is really life-giving, it's life-bringing, and there's so much injustice that needs to be held accountable, right? Somebody needs to account for it, and her story is part of bringing that justice into those places where they have been overlooked. There has been injustice for so long. So again, thank you so much, Ashley, for coming on. And you guys go follow her, go like her, go download her stuff. And I look forward to having you back on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.